Hey everyone, this is Mr. K. Today we're going to go over part 12 of the pre-calculus summer homework, so writing equations of lines. We're going to use two different forms, so just be aware of that, and you'll see that as we get to it. The first one, when they give you the slope and the y-intercept, that is just y equals mx plus b, where m is your slope and b is your y-intercept. So that's just going to be y equals 3x plus 5, done. When it contains the point, you might have to do a little bit extra work, but because they said it's an undefined slope, whenever they say undefined slope, that means it's going to be a vertical line. If it was a horizontal line, it would say that it has a slope of 0. So those are the only two things to kind of watch out for with that. And so I know I can just look at the x value here, because looking from our previous part is that vertical lines are always x equals something. So this is just going to be x equals 5. That's it. Done with that. Looking over at the next problem. Oh, there we go. It says has a slope of 0, so I know it's going to be a horizontal line. And so I'm going to write this as y equals, and I look at my point that it's passing through, and y equals 2. That's it. That's all you need to do. The next one, so this is where I typically write these in different forms. So it says it's passing through the point 2, 5, and we know that the slope is 2/3. I use this thing called point slope form, which looks like y minus y1, and that's going to equal m, and then it's going to be x minus x1. So if you know the slope, that's your m. And then the x1, y1, those are the x and y coordinates of the point that you want to pass through. So I could write this out as y minus, and now my y coordinate is 5, and that's going to equal 2/3, and then x minus my x coordinate, which is 2. If these were negative, you could then just change this to, like if this was -5, you could change that to addition. And then that's it, you're done. Otherwise, if you wanted to write it in like y equals mx plus b, what you'd have to do is, we know that the slope is 2/3, and then you substitute in those points. So I'd say 5 is my y, and that's going to equal 2/3 times 2 and then plus b, and now I got to go through and solve for b. So I'd have 5 equals 4/3 plus b, subtract 4/3 on each side, and you should get b equals 11/3, or you could have the decimal, which would be like 3.6 repeating, and then you could write it out as y equals 2/3 x and then plus 11/3, but that's more work. I'm lazy. I'm going to stick with, this is called point slope form. So unless it specifies which form you need to write it in, that's always, point slope form is going to be easier when you know the point and you know the slope right away. So looking at the next problem, we have a point, and then it says it's parallel to that line. So if it's going to be parallel, that means it's going to have the same slope. So I'm looking right there at the slope. It's going to be 5, 6, points 2, 8. So I'm going to write it in point slope form. So y minus 8, and that's going to equal 5, 6 times x minus 2. That's it. You're done. Looking at the next one, contains the point 4, 7. It is perpendicular to the y-axis. So if it's going to be perpendicular to the y-axis, this is the y-axis, so I know it's going to be just a flat line, so it's going to have a slope of 0, so we already had one like that, so I know that the equation is going to be y equals 7. Next it says contains the points -3, 6 and 1, 2. So now we can find the slope by doing the equation for slope is going to be y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Another thing that I like to do is I just do like the change in y divided by change in x. So when I look at this, I see that my y changed by going down 4. So I'm going to start with negative 4. Divided by, I see that my x changed by going up 4, or increasing by 4. So I'm going to make that positive 4. And so I know my slope is negative 1. You could just go through and use the formula here, but I think that's easier the way that I do it. But you do whatever you think is best. So then now that we have our slope, now you can do point slope form by just picking a point, or you could go through and do the y-intercept. I'm going to pick the point 1, 2, and I'm going to do point slope form. So y minus 2 equals negative 1, and then x minus 1. That's it. Done. An x-intercept of 2 and a y-intercept of 3. So now be careful with this. Some students like to think that it's the point 2, 3, and that is not the case. What you're really doing is you really have x-intercept of 2, so you're at 2, 0, and a y-intercept of 3, so you're at the point 0, 3. So you're using those 2 points to find the equation of your line. And so we can do something similar to what I did on the previous problem. Y is going up by 3, x decreases by 2, and so our slope would be negative 3/2. And now I can just pick a point. It doesn't matter which one. Actually, it might be easier because they give us the y-intercept right here. So I can write this out as y equals negative 3/2 x plus 3. That time it was easier to do the y equals mx plus b because we knew what b was right away. We didn't have to do any extra work. Next, contains the point negative 1, 2, and is perpendicular to the line. So in order to figure out like what our slope is, we need to first figure out the slope of this line. So I would solve for y. So I'm going to subtract 5 on both sides. That doesn't matter. I'm also going to subtract 2x on both sides. And so I'll get negative 3y equals negative 2x minus 5. I'm going to divide everything by negative 3. And I don't have to do anything else. I see right here, negative 2 divided by negative 3. That's going to have a slope. That's going to be my slope here. So the slope of this line is 2/3. Which means if I want something perpendicular to that, I need to do the opposite reciprocal. So flip the fraction, change the sign. So I know that my slope of the new line is going to be negative 3/2, and now I have the point that it's passing through. So again, point slope form, much nicer. Y minus 2 equals negative 3/2 x, and now because this is negative, I'm just going to make this plus 1, and that's it. You're done. The last one is quite a bit more work. So we have the passes through 2, 3, also passes through the midpoint of the line segment of the endpoints, negative 1, 0, and 3, 2. So we need to first find the midpoint of these two, and then we have our 2 points, and then we got to do the same thing that we did up above. So to find the midpoint, there's a midpoint formula. So the midpoint is x1 plus x2 over 2, and then y1 plus y2 over 2. A way that I always think of it is you're just averaging your x, averaging your y, or figuring out where the middle of them is, each separate coordinate. So like if I had to do negative 1 plus 3, that's 2, divided by 2 is 1, so I know that I have my x coordinate of 1 for my midpoint. And then here if 0 plus 2 is 2, divided by 2 is 1. So I know the midpoint of those coordinates would be 1, 1. Again, you can follow the formula if you want, whatever way works best for you. And so now I'm doing what I did before. I see that the change in y goes down by 2. I see that the change in x goes down by 1. So my slope would be positive 2, because negative divided by negative is a positive. I can pick a point that it passes through. I'll pick the point 1, 1. And so I'll do y minus 1 is going to equal 2, and then parentheses x minus 1. and that would be the equation of my last line. So I hope you found this video helpful, and have a great day.